question that I'm getting pretty often is, how do we stay in the preferred state? So in this video, I want to show you some ways and some reminders so that it's easy for you to stay in the desired reality. Because what most people experience is this wavering, right? They have gained a little bit of clarity. They know what their desire is. They start to imagine it. They start to identify with it. Maybe they, really are able for some hours to, experience the wish fulfilled state. But then, something happens on the outside, or something lures them back into the old state, and they react again, or they feel triggered again, or something in the 3D basically is happening. And then they wonder, okay, so I know how to shift, but how do I stay in my desired state? And honestly, I think that some people do overcomplicate staying in a desired state, because do you right now do anything to stay in the state that you're in right now? Ask yourself that, really, be with me right now. Do you do anything, any manifestation technique, any shift, any effort, so to speak? Do you do anything right now to stay and to be in the state that you're in right now? And the answer is probably not, right? You just wake up and you know yourself to be the person that you are right now. You don't do anything to uphold that, because that has become natural. That is what you automatically identify with. And that is also the goal that we want to achieve with a new state, right? We want to achieve this point where this is obvious that we are this, and then we stay automatically in it. And so this basically happens because we've built a momentum for the new state. As your current state has gained a certain momentum and you stay automatically in it, you automatically come back to it, right? You can also gain this momentum for this new state. And once that has its own momentum, well, you will automatically dwell in it without you having to do something for it. The only thing that you have to do is you have to build this momentum, right? You have to learn how to come back to the desired state so that it gains the momentum, so that you automatically see the world from it, so that this is automatically what you identify yourself with, right? What you believe to be true. So how do we do that, okay? Now, here are basically 5 steps that I have prepared for you. So the first thing, and that is the main key, because you have to stay aware, you have to stay conscious, right? You have to observe yourself. You have to not judge and blame yourself. So what does that mean? Most people are like NPCs, right? Like non-playable characters in the game. They don't even know that they exist. They have no awareness of over their inner world. They have no awareness of where they dwell, what they imagine, what they shift into, right? It just happens all very automatically, non-consciously. But the first key that will help you to stay in your preferred state, in the desired state, is you have to stay aware so that you notice when your reactions are again coming from the old state, or when a lot of self-talk, a lot of thoughts are again coming from the old state. This is not a problem, as we will discover later, but simply by staying aware, right? And you can increase the self-awareness, for example, through some meditations. You can increase it also through doing daily check-ins with yourself and simply asking yourself within, like, where do I dwell right now? What am I believing to be true? What's my outlook on life? From which state do I operate? And doing these check-ins throughout the day, that can help you immensely to understand the state that you're in right now. And if that doesn't match, well, then it's no need to blame yourself and be like, oh no, it doesn't match. Oh no, I've fallen out of my state. Oh, I've wavered back in an old state. You can celebrate, because the fact alone that you noticed right now gives you the opportunity to do 2 things. First of all, you see that you are not the state, because you've simply observed that you're in a state, but you're free to change it again. You're not bound to it. And the second thing is that you can change it again after you've observed it. So once you observed and recognize the state that you're in right now, and maybe that's an old state, well, then first of all, give yourself congratulations, because you now observed, you now have gained the awareness. You've now taken a step back and realized, oh, I'm in that state, but that's not me. I can be in a new state, and then you can also be in that new state again. And I will also in this video later show you, again, 5 ways for you to shift back into the old state, the 5 main ways that Neville talked about. So it needs awareness, okay? And if you, by the way, I know that some of you thought about working with me, but I have my program, which is a more bigger commitment, so to speak. And if that's too high for you right now, but you still want to benefit from these teachings, remember that I've broken down my entire program, the entire framework, including self-awareness, including shifting states, including methods on to do it. I've broken that all down in my inner circle, that is, you can join that for only $50, and that is my community of like-minded people, which you can join. You'll find it on my website, upgradeyourlife.com, if that's interesting for you. Going back to ways to stay in your preferred state. So we need awareness, right? Without awareness, we will just, go back and forth and not even realize it. So that's the first key. And then if you notice that you are not in your preferred state or you reacted, then first of all, relax, right? Don't judge yourself. Don't be like, oh my God, I reacted. I quickly need to do a manifestation technique, because if I don't, then my manifestation runs away, my desired state ceases to exist, and I can no longer have it, which is completely not true, right? If you noticed, because you have self-awareness, you have built this up, you have now more awareness of where you dwell within. If you then see that, you've basically, you came back to an old state, or you even reacted, or you got triggered, that's not the problem. The problem would then only be if you don't take action, if you don't take inner action about it. Meaning if you stay in that old state that you reacted from. But if you notice that you reacted, if you notice that you got triggered, if you notice that you're dissatisfied again, if you notice that your self-talk doesn't match, or that you think of the desire again, if you notice all of that, then first of all, relax and don't judge yourself for it. That can happen. That happens to most people. That happened to me. That happened to Neville when he wanted to go to Barbados. He doubted all the time. He worried about all the time. He has fallen back into the old state all the time. But if you understand that can happen, and it's even very likely to happen, it's usually not that we shift, boom, and we stay in the desired state. It's usually more like we nurture it. It's not that we do it once and then it's like a book we close and it's like, okay, that's it. That can happen for some desires, but especially for the desires that we perceive have more importance to us, you need to nurture it so that you decrease the importancy by dwelling in the wish for long enough. Then the importancy will decrease because you will have gained this naturalness for the desired state. So that's key, right? And then once you have relaxed, once you have stop judging yourself and you just notice, oh, okay, I've fallen out of my state. Okay, so what, right? So, okay, all cool. Then you can remember that your desired state is not lost just because you reacted, which is what most people think, right? Most people think, okay, just because the circumstances are showing something, undesirable, or maybe seemingly as the opposite, or just because I reacted, just because I got triggered, just because of that, my desired reality, my desired state now ceased to exist and I can no longer have it. It's outside of this universe right now and it's no longer achievable for me, which is really not true. Nothing can make a portion of creation cease to exist. Creation is finished. So nothing can take away, nothing can take a portion of creation outside of creation. You can only by letting your own inner dialogue and your own inner world, by letting that sway you off and always make you feel triggered and you never really relax about it, only that can keep you in the old state, and therefore you won't really experience your manifestation. But the manifestation is still waiting for you. It's not outside of existence just because you reacted, just because you got triggered. You have to understand that it's never away. You can be triggered for 3 weeks. Okay, that's not really helping you a lot, but at the same time, it's also not taking away your desire. Because after you notice again, okay, let me maneuver back in my wish fulfilled state, right? But that comes basically right now. But this is the first beginning. Being aware so that you know in which states you even dwell. Then when you notice there's something wrong, then relax, giving yourself permission to react, giving yourself permission to have these human moments. That's fine. Then remember that your desired state is not lost. It's not outside of existence. Then gently choose your desired state again, right? We want to occupy it again. We want to now see, okay, I've been in that state. I've understood that. I've reacted from that state. So, okay, so what? And then after I'm calm again, let me then choose my desired state again. Let me identify with my desired reality again. Let me imagine that I have what I want to have again. Let me make it natural within myself again. And we can do that, or we can shift again by applying your preferred method. You can also just decide, but for some people, usually the importance for the desire is too high, so just deciding for it won't create naturalness. But for some people, that's a very bold approach, or just deciding it again, saying like, no, this is who I am. But for most people, it will be very helpful to play with these methods and to see which one resonates with them so that they can, maneuver internally in that wish-fulfilled state. But this is summed up how you stay in your desired state, right? As you see, it's not rocket science. It's not a problem when you've fallen out of it. The only problem is when you then don't do anything about it, when you then dwell in the old state for 3 years and you don't change it. But because you have awareness and you have gained more self-awareness and you have then noticed that you've shifted out of it and you reminded yourself that this is not a problem, that it's still available and that it's not lost, you can then gently maneuver back in it. And that's how you stay in it. And once you go back in it, and this is now bringing me back to what I said in the beginning, once you now make it natural again, and you make it natural again, and you make it natural again, you will also build a momentum for this state, as you've built a momentum for your current state, which you automatically return back to. Once you now build a momentum for the new state, well, that will become at some point so automatic that you then at some point don't have to do anything to stay in it, because it will then be who you automatically identify yourself as. And that's the cool part about it. Your only job is, in a sense, to follow these 5 steps and to build that momentum by going back to it if you've fallen out of it. And that's easy when you follow these 5 steps. So what are ways for you to shift your state, right? What are ways for you when you then have noticed that you're not in your desired state? What are ways for you to go back in the wish-fulfilled state, make it natural again, like the spider that spins the web, and it spins again and it spins again, and every time we go back, at some point it's obvious to us, it's certain, it is who we are. We know that we have it. So again, there are these 5 main ways that I, talk a lot about on my channel, that Neville talked a lot about in his lectures and in his teachings. And the first way is that you imagine a scene that implies fulfillment, right? Meaning you can ask yourself, if my desire is already realized and I already have this in my life, what would imply that to me? What would a friend say to me when they see me with this desire? What would a family member say? What would I do differently in my day-to-day life? What would change? What would happen? How would 2 people speak about me? Right? This is all stuff that anchors you more in the desired state by you imagining that, by you experiencing that. And you can utilize visualizing for that. You can utilize inner hearing people talk about you, hearing a best friend congratulating you. You have to find your own way. There is not the art of manifesting. There is your art of manifesting that we want to find, right? What resonates with you to shift in that new state. But that's a key way, right? So with that way, I've manifested, I would say, most of the desires that I had up until this point right now. I followed this core method of Neville, is imagine a short little scene that implies I have my desire. Second way is revision, meaning we reimagine the past, right? So there is a certain past that we are right now identified with. X happened 2 days ago, but we can reimagine that so that we think something else has actually happened, right? So we think this happened, and we remember, 2 days ago, this event happened, but what if we imagine that now this happened, something else? And the more we imagine that, the more we will actually think that this new past is real for us. This is revision, and this will also obviously project itself into the future, because we will then be identified with a new state, and with this identified with an old state from the past. So super powerful. I remember when, right? I remember when can help us to also disengage and disidentify from an old state, because we remember on it as though it's now no longer relevant for us. So let's just say right now you have physical symptoms, health symptoms. You can start to, I remember when I had these health symptoms, but not just saying the words. It's not in the words. The magic is not in the words. The magic is in actually placing your awareness through these words on the new state. So by saying, I remember when I had these symptoms, and then you feel really into it, like, I really remember when I had these symptoms. That helps you to put yourself internally already in a state where you no longer have symptoms, you're fully healthy, and the current circumstances, basically you put them in the past, as though this is no longer who you are. I remember, when I had this, to shift your awareness now in the wish fulfilled. Super powerful. One of the most underestimated methods, I would say. Then you can simply claim it. That's a very bold and courageous approach, right? You can claim your desired state again. You can appropriate it. You can choose it, assume it, decide it, right? It's not a in a sense, like a lot to that method. It's simply a bold shift, a decision, right? A decision is also a shift in consciousness. And again, you have to see, again, for every use case, there is a there's a best technique and the best way, and you have to find, for whatever use case you have right now, for whatever your desire is, you have to find your own way to shift. I can help you find that if you want to work with me, but you can also do that by yourself, and these are some ways to shift. There's also scripting, right? And there's also the way, how would I feel if X, Y, and Z would already be true for me, right? This is a shifting question. How would I see the world? How would people see me? How would I walk on the street? How would I perceive the world? If this is already who I am, if I already have this in my life. It's like you changing lenses. You're putting on now the lens of the version of you that has this in your life. And remember that doubts and fears might arise when you shift. So when you go back, right? Because this video is about how do we stay in the desired state. And this means that we might fall out of it sometimes, but then we have to nurture it, right, by going back to it. So it builds its momentum, it becomes natural. And when you do that, right, when you shift and when you do this inner work, so to speak, it is very natural and very common that doubts and fears arise in this moving process. Doubts, fears, that the world reflects back some old news and some old states you've been in. You simply have to stay conscious, you have to stay centered, you have to stay aware and not let that overwhelm you, right? Doubts and fears are not a hindrance, only if you let them be. If you fall for them, if you get lured in by them. But if you face them, if you acknowledge them, if you give them their space, if you learn how to transcend them, which I talk about in my program, then this is no longer something that will really hold you back. You will no longer fear the fear. You will no longer fear the doubts. They can be there, but they don't take anything away from you. So I want to now conclude this with a couple of quotes from Neville, and then you should have a good summary of how to stay in your desired state. So as Neville said, you are experiencing an infinite amount of states in this lifetime. Right now, you are either in a state of knowing that your desire is yours, so you're either in a state of the wish fulfilled, or you're in a state of not knowing it is yours, so you've fallen out of it, right? So the question is, how do we stay in the knowing of it? Like I said, right, by noticing all of that, and then by maneuvering back, and by following the 5 steps that I shared in the beginning. Either way, both states are equally valid, and one is no more hard and easy to shift into. I love how he said this, right? They're equally valid. It's not a problem when you fall out of the desired state. It's equally valid. It's okay. We can go back and shift into the other one again. You don't have to remain in a state if you made a mistake. Also, key point, right? If you've unwittingly or if you have unconsciously dwelt in an undesired state and now you find yourself in your life in being in undesired circumstances, that's not a problem. You don't have to remain there because we have the free choice. We have the free will to go in a new reality, to go in a new state, right? You can change states morning, noon, and night. It doesn't need to be like a lot of effort. It only needs you to recognize and to notice that you've fallen out of your state, right? But the state to which you most constantly return constitutes your dwelling place. That is what I meant with the momentum, right? The state to which you constantly return. Not you return into it once, you close the book and you forget about it, and then you wonder why you haven't shifted. No, by you carrying that with you as a frequency, and you really make it your priority to nurture that state, it becomes your dwelling place. It becomes automatically how you see the world. It becomes automatically the state from which you see life and the world. It becomes automatically what you're identified with because you've built this momentum, right? The state to which you most constantly return is your dwelling place. Do not be concerned as to how, when, or where, only the end, right? We should not worry about the bridge of unfolding. If you are in debt, what is the solution? That you win the lottery or an uncle dies and leaves you his fortune? No, right? That is what you rationally think. Oh, this should happen, and this should happen, and this should happen. No, the end is that you're debt-free, that you're financially abundant, right? How would you feel if all your bills were paid? Assume that feeling and let imagination harden that feeling, harden that state into fact. And how do you occupy state? Again, by asking yourself, how would you feel? What would you see, hear, touch, taste, smell if your dream was real? Basically, this method to shift again, right? How would I feel, or what would I experience in my imagination? What would I experience if it would be true? Let me experience that right now. So these are, for me, the ways, and this is for me the one video that you need to understand how to, stay in your desired state, how to stay in your desired reality within, how to stay in your preferred state so that this can express in your world. I would love your feedback and comments and questions down below. Definitely leave me your insights on that. And if you have any questions, then also leave that. If you need more resources, I always link my free masterclass as one of the main resources where I really, in a summarized way, show you how to shift, the mistakes that people do, what's important. So that's the first link in the video description, pinned comments. It's also at the same time my email newsletter if you want to be updated for new videos. If you want a real structured system and guidance and accountability, like-minded people, my coaching, weekly calls with the community so that you can really hone all of that in and you are committed to that, then apply for my program, see if you're a good fit, and we can work together in my program. That's the second link. And if you want to get started and you don't want to commit to such a program yet and you just want to get a taste for it, for the entire Neville Goddard framework and how to manifest your desires, then also be aware that I offer a inner circle community for only $50. You find it on my website, upgradeyourlife.com, and you can simply check it out there and join it if it resonates with you. So that's it. Speak to you in the next one. Bye, guys.